So I think it's gonna come as a surprise to absolutely no one that I'm behind on my yearly reading goal. I don't know what it is with me and my procrastination. Every single year, November, December rolls around and I'm 10 to 15 books behind. And so this year's no different. And I'm currently 15 books behind. And it's also the end of November. But I have faith in myself, and that's why we're here. We are going to be reading 7 books in 7 days to at least try and help me bridge that gap in my reading goal. But my goal is to read 7 books that have been released this year. That way I'm also kind of getting hip to what people are reading this year and just new things that have been released. I feel like this year just wasn't like a good year for me when it comes to like booktube, when it comes to reading in general. Like I even started to reflect on the books that I have read this year. I actually can't think of a book that I read this year that I was like, phenomenal. Oh my God, 10 out of 10. You know, maybe when I go back and reflect, there will be a few, but I definitely don't think there's going to be 10 of, at least from what I've read this year so far. But I'm also 15 books behind. So we'll talk about the books that I'm choosing to read as we go. I don't want to give you the synopsis of 7 books right now. A lot of these are going to be via audio just because I tend to read those a bit quicker. So the first book though, or the first audio book that I'm going to start with, I'm actually a little nervous about. And that is going to be Odd Spirits by S.T. Gibson. And the reason I'm nervous about this is because the last book I read by this author was A Dowry of Blood. And a lot of people loved that book. Me, not so much. But this book is only 3 hours on audio, which should be probably closer to like an hour and a half once it's sped up, which is why we're giving it a chance. And so I feel like I didn't like A Dowry of Blood, mostly because it was about vampires and just like the writing style just didn't really vibe with me. But I'm hoping that because this is about a marriage between a magician and a witch, and how their love is being pushed to the limits, I'm hoping that that's more up my alley, but we'll see. I'm actually playing games right now, talking to the camera when I have 10 minutes to get to work. Okay. Okay, so it is the end of the work day. And man, there's literally nobody in the office today. I don't even know why they made us come in, but I did get a lot done, which is good. I got about an hour into Odd Spirits, and I just realized that this is a prequel to another series by S.T. Gibson, but I am enjoying it. So the story is about a witch and a magician who are married, and they're realizing that they have some weird spirit in their house. Something is going on, and they're kind of blaming each other, like, your magician stuff is causing this, and he's like, no, your witch stuff is causing this. And so they're trying to figure out like what is the actual cause and why they're having all of this weird stuff kind of happen around their house. And I'm enjoying learning about the couple and like their background. There is kind of like this like southern slang to the audiobook narrator, which I'm really enjoying. It even talks about like a black church in the South, because I believe the witch is black and then her husband isn't. So it's kind of talking about that dynamic a little bit too. But overall, I am enjoying this little short audiobook so far. I am in the car because we are about to go see my parents for Thanksgiving. We're about to start this little road trip. Gas full, stomach full, heart about to be full, you know. Okay, so I safely made it to my parents' house and I finished Odd Spirits. And you know, this book surprised me. I think I'm going to give it a 3.5. While S.T. Gibson's other work wasn't my cup of tea, I will say that this author does a really good job of writing relationship dynamics, especially in such a short amount of time. I feel like in this story, even though that it was such a short book, we were able to kind of uncover mystery while also exploring the dynamic of a young couple, and they're kind of realizing that maybe they haven't always been so truthful and honest in their relationship, and we're seeing them try to navigate that and how it's kind of intertwined into this little ghost mystery story. Pleasantly surprised, for sure. But I am going to the library with my mom to pick up 2 physical books so that I have something to read with my eyes in the next couple of days. So figured we'd use the local library for that. Alright, so as you guys saw, I picked up James by Percival Everett and I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. So I'm gonna save these probably for tomorrow and Friday when I'm kind of just being a little bit more lazy and I can use my eyes to read the books. But for now, I am listening to the new Keke Palmer book, Master of Me. And she says that it's not an autobiography. I'm not that far into it yet, so I'll let you guys know what it's kind of really about once I really get into it. But I decided to listen to an audiobook because I'm attempting to cook dinner for my family. And here's the thing about me. I'm not a good cook. Well, I don't want to say I'm not good, but I don't try. So this is my attempt because my family will tell me the truth. We have some Thai food on speed dial just in case it turns out nasty, but hoping for the best. But right now, some of that stuff is in the oven. So I'm gonna actually start working on some stuff for Christmas. So every year, me and my friends do like a friends Christmas, and we call ourselves a quad because there's 4 of us. But it's my turn to host, and every year we do like a theme. And so this year, since I'm hosting, I've decided that the theme is going to be Camp Quad. So think about kind of like Girl Scout camp, cabin feeling, outdoorsy feeling. It's gonna be inside. But I wanna make like the itinerary and the invitations and some other stuff we're gonna need for crafts. So I decided I'm gonna work on that on Canva while I listen to the Keke Palmer book. And so we're getting some stuff done. I'm feeling productive and I love that. So let's do that. Okay, so I'm in the car because I feel like anytime I'm in the house around my family, I have to like whisper when I'm trying to film a clip. But I did finish Master of Me by Keke Palmer, and I actually really enjoyed it. I think sometimes when celebrities have like self-help books or a memoir of some kind, you're kind of like, okay, but like, is this realistic advice for someone in my scenario when you're famous? I think with Keke though, like, I think she's always been someone who just feels very down to earth, and the way that she was describing some of her experiences and the advice that she has for people coming out of the experience feels like it can be relatable no matter what life stage you're in or if you're famous or not, right? And so I think I had mentioned that this wasn't pitched as a memoir, and I would say this is more of just like how to invest in yourself. You know, she talks about some of her personal things, like the whole issue with her baby daddy, but how she kind of tried to turn that into like a positive experience. She also talks about just like a lot of other stuff in general. She talks about colorism in the Black community and how that's impacted her career. And I think her perspective, because she is, you know, an actress and she's famous, but she's kind of branded herself into this like new digital age. And I think a lot of the stuff she was talking about is good for anybody who's public facing. So like, I mean, there's not that many of you guys here. Well, actually, I consider 1,700 a lot of people. But I say if you're putting yourself on the internet at all, you are a public figure and you're putting yourself in a public space. And so just you know, making sure that you're taking care of yourself and keeping in mind like the persona that you're putting out there, right? Like that's usually not ever going to be 100% your true self. Always keeping that in mind too, if you aren't someone who's public facing, that these people that are, like, we never know 100% of who they are as a person, right? You only know what people are deciding to show you. And she talks a lot about being an entrepreneur. I don't know why I'm saying it like that. But the reason that she's talking about that, and that's the whole point of like mastering me, right, is like you are your own best business. Always make sure that you're pursuing your passions, even if you're working like a 9 to 5. If that's not your passion, you know, use that 9 to 5 to fuel your passions and all of that. Also, I know that there's physical copies of this book out there, but I just don't think it would hit the same. Like 100% the audio book is the correct way to take in this book, because Kiki reads it herself, and if you've listened to her talk, if you've seen her on a show, if you've seen her in an interview, she has these like little, what I like to call like Kiki-isms. Like she is just so funny. And in the book, it's like clear that she's reading something, but then she like interjects with like little things that just like made me giggle the entire time. Long way of saying, highly recommend. I'm glad I listened to this. I think it was the perfect thing that I needed going into the new year. It's just making me reflect on a few things, which I really appreciate. But the next book I'm going to read is I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. So I would say Stephen Graham Jones is probably one of my favorite horror authors. I've read a few things by him that actually made me want to throw up, but it was well written. I feel like all of his books just have this very like eerie feeling to them. So I'm interested to pick this one up though, because I've heard mixed reviews about it. Some people really love it. I think other people are like, not so much. I also have the audiobook for this, but I'm gonna try and tandem read, maybe use my eyes a little bit to read it, you know, we'll see. Also, happy Thanksgiving. Today is Thanksgiving Day. I'm so excited to eat. My mom and my sister usually handle the main courses. I'm still building trust with cooking anything that would ruin Thanksgiving, you know, like I can't do the mac and cheese because if it's bad, people are gonna be upset. So I stick to the deviled eggs. You know, if I mess them up, no one's crying over it, right? But if I get them right, it's like a nice little side. Oh, last night I did cook for my family. I mentioned that to you guys, and they liked it. And I don't think they were lying, because my stepdad actually asked for the recipe, which means that he liked it. I think if they didn't like it, they would just push it around the plate and been like, interesting flavors. But you know, I'm learning something new. I'm proud of myself for trying it, and I'm glad that my first attempt wasn't horrible. I ended up making like a beef stew of sorts. It didn't look the best, but I promise it tasted pretty good. I'm thankful that you guys are here watching this video. I'm thankful that like you've stuck around. I feel like this is probably the first video I've posted in a few months. I think I always want to come back to BookTube, and I'm always thankful for this community and just the opportunity for you guys just to listen to little old me talk. But I do think that on some reflection, I feel like, and even listening to that Kiki Palmer book, I feel like sometimes I don't put myself first and my creative ideas first. So yeah, I'm just going to be believing in myself a little bit more in 2025. And so I'm glad I'm having that reflection now and naturally, instead of having to, you know, sit down at the end of the year and be like, oh, what are my goals for 2025? I'm glad that's just something that feels natural and right to me. So yeah, I'm thankful for all of that. I'm thankful. I'm just thankful. And we're back to whispering because I'm in the house. So, but I am about 75% of the way through I Was a Teenage Slasher, and I'm really enjoying this. So in this book, we follow Tolly and his best friend, who they kind of fade into the background of their high school, aside from Tolly being known for having this really extreme peanut allergy, and because his dad had died in like a tragic car/tractor incident. And there are two catalysts that kind of kick off this book. One actually doesn't involve Tolly or his friend, and the other one is when Tolly and his friend go to a party And I don't know what I was expecting with this book, but this is such a unique take on the slasher genre. I'm not someone who watches slashers all the time, so I'm not completely knowledgeable of all of like the tropes and all of that that go into a slasher movie, but I feel like this book does a good job of trying to explain that. And the story being told by Tolly isn't completely linear too, but I think that just kind of adds to his perspective and like how the story is unfolding. To me, it adds to the story, but I can see how if you're only reading this physically, this book could feel like it's just kind of dragging on and you're not really getting to the meat of the story, the meat of him being a teenage slasher, and I can understand that. However, I am reading this with my eyes, but also listening to it on audio, and I feel like the audio for me definitely adds something to the book, and I think is actually adding to my enjoyment like immensely. And I'm not gonna lie, I think this is feeling like a 5-star. It's feeling like a 5-star, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself because I still have some ways to go. But if it's not a 5-star, I think it's going to be a solid 4-star. I don't want to jinx it either, but if it ends up being a 5-star, I think it may make my top 10 books of the year. I said it. Ooh, I feel like I should take it back. I feel like I should take it back. That's my review. No, I'm kidding, but I'm gonna give I Was a Teenage Slasher 4.5 stars. I feel like the audiobook really helped add to the atmosphere of the book. So this book is set in the 80s, and if you grew up in Texas or are familiar with West Texas at all, I feel like the atmosphere and just like the language used was just so spot on. And while on the surface this book is like a slasher book, you know, and we are following in the perspective of someone killing all these people, I think there's a lot of underlying themes in the book. I think it talks a lot about just growing up, that feeling you have when you're kind of an outcast where you don't know where you fit in, you're making mistakes, you're learning about yourself, and I feel like all of that was very clear throughout this book, even though we were talking about a slasher. And the point of view of this kind of reminded me of You by Caroline Kepnes, and I feel like that is such an iconic story and book because of the POV, and I feel the same way about this as well. Again, I can understand why some people don't like this book or they're getting mixed feelings about it, but I personally really love this one. And so I got this from the library, but I definitely will be buying myself a physical copy, and I feel like Stephen Graham Jones just continues to prove why he is one of my favorite authors. I think before I was saying he was one of my favorite horror authors, and to be honest, I don't read that much horror unless it's from Stephen Graham Jones, so I feel like I just need to say that he is one of my favorite authors. So I'll definitely be buying my own copy of this. I don't know if it's necessarily one of my favorite books of all time, but I do think that even though this is a 4.5, I think it's still going to make it into my top 10 books of the year because I just feel like I haven't had that good of a reading year and I hadn't been super excited to pick anything else up. But this one just kind of gave me that excitement for reading again. So you may be seeing this again in some lists and things. But now that I finished that, I am going to read James by Percival Everett. I'm going to be honest. I'm not quite sure what this is about. But I keep seeing it on Bookstagram. I know that I think it was Barnes and Noble's book of the year. Like this book keeps popping up everywhere. So I was actually surprised that the library had it, but I'm excited to listen/read this today. Hopefully I can finish this and that way tomorrow and Monday, I'm trying to remember what day it is, I can catch up on another book. I feel like the reason I do these like timed vlogs is to help me stay accountable, and yet here I am, I think this is technically day 6, and I am just now finishing my 4th book, which means I'm 2 books behind. But you know, we're gonna look at the brighter side of things, and that's the fact that I've read 4 books in the past 6 days. But I did finish James, and I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm not sure how coherent they're gonna be. And so James is like a flipped perspective story on the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And if you don't know what the adventures of Huckleberry Finn is about, because I know I didn't before reading the book, it's about a young boy named Huck who fakes his death to try to escape his abusive father. And he takes a slave named Jim with him. And they kind of get into all of these adventures. They meet some con artists. And Huck is really fighting with like the morality of slaves and taking Jim with him as he's out there in the world that doesn't necessarily feel like slavery is bad, you know. So he's grappling with that throughout the story. And I feel like you don't necessarily have to have read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn before getting into James, because I feel like I was able to pick a lot of that up just by James's perspective, or Jim's perspective, of all of these events happening. So in James, we follow Jim's perspective as he's trying to get to his family. His wife and his daughter were separated from him, and we just follow his perspective as he's, you know, meeting other slaves, other slave owners, other people who don't necessarily believe in slavery, or they don't think that they do, and his just encounters and interactions with them as a Black person. The book also talks about passing a bit. I won't say in what context, but I thought in this story, the thought of passing was really interesting. But my enjoyment of the book, okay, I don't know if it's just because I'm a Black person and I've read a lot about slavery. I know a lot about slavery just in general, that this book isn't one that I would necessarily say that I enjoyed. I think maybe if you read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and you were always curious about the perspective of Jim, I could see how this would be maybe more enjoyable, maybe more interesting. And you know, I feel like my lack of enjoyment isn't the book's fault by any means, because I just don't enjoy historical fiction in general. So I feel like going into this, it was probably at a disadvantage to the book. But I feel like it was well written. I enjoyed the tone of voice. I enjoyed Jim as a character, and like I feel like I could understand some of the decisions he was making, even though they were really hard. Also because Jim is bouncing around between a lot of different areas and he's kind of transient in this book. There are a lot of characters for the book to be so short, but I do feel like you understood kind of like the purpose of each character and why they were interjected in the story when they were. Ooh, I don't know if I want to say this. Me thinking about this book winning all of these awards. Ooh, I don't know how to say this nicely. It was good, but I'm not understanding the hype around it. And maybe that's just because I didn't read Adventures of Huckleberry Finn or not. But with that, I'll say that I'm giving the book a 3.5 star. Like I said, it was fine. It was good. Just not my cup of tea, but I won't take away from the quality of the book by any means. Also, as you can see, I'm finally back at home. I did a little drive today, and that's when I finished most of James. And so I think now, because I'm behind, I think I still want to stick to some of the books that I was going to read, but I think the next book that I'm going to read will be Annie Bot. I feel like I'm just itching for some sci-fi, so I think I'm going to go with this. And I think the audiobook is like 9 hours, which sped up will probably be about 4.5, 5 hours. So I'm going to be real with y'all. I'm probably not going to finish it today. I know I was just talking about, you know, the timing and then I'm behind, but I'm being realistic because it's 4 o'clock. It's Sunday. I have to go to work tomorrow. I just feel like I'm probably not going to finish it today, but we're going to start it. We're going to start it, and we're going to hope for the best. Okay, so I'm on my lunch break from work, so I wanted to give you guys a quick update. I'm 40% of the way through Annie Bot, and this story is really interesting because it kind of goes into a conversation I was having with my friend. But first, a quick synopsis. And so this story follows a robot named Annie who she's becoming more human by the day. She's starting to learn human emotions. She's starting to figure out human motivations. It's making her kind of think about her dynamic with her owner. And I feel like her owner is like kind of always battling with this thought that he has feelings for Annie, but also remembering that she's a robot. And so we're following Annie as she's having these like realizations. She's having these like new emotions. She's trying to experiment and explore a little bit more. So far, it's just very interesting because me and my friend had a conversation the other day about just like dating culture now, and how a lot of people aren't used to having human interaction as like a first meet or a first step. Most of the time for dating now, you're going to go on a dating app instead of like meeting someone at a bar and approaching them, whatever. And we were talking about AI, and we were saying how eventually probably AI is going to take place of some people's dating, especially if AI can be put into robots and all of that. Just kind of exploring the thought of why would you go through the hassle of meeting someone new, potentially going through a lot of heartache and emotion, if you could just go through an AI or a bot. And so she was saying she's happy that she's now married, but good luck to me, but I just thought that that was like an interesting conversation to have prior to me reading this book, because it kind of gets into that. I feel like there's a lot of themes and different things to probably be discussed in this book. My phone ran out of storage and cut me off. So rude. But what I was saying is I think this will be a good book club book because there's a lot of things to talk about. But we'll see, because I'm only 40% of the way in. So I'll see where it ends up. And then I will come back to you guys with a final review. And hopefully we can squeeze in another book or two tonight to get this 7 books done. So I'm gonna have to change the title of this video to trying to read as many books as I can in 7 days, or seeing how many books I can read in 7 days. Trying to catch up on my Goodreads goal in 7 days, because I definitely did not read 7 books in 7 days. But we did read 5. And for me, I feel like a win is a win. That is like 4 more than I would typically read in a week. And I don't even want to say typically, because clearly I haven't even been reading that, which is why I've been behind on my goal. But anyways, let's talk about Annie Bot. I actually really enjoyed this. I feel like this is a very like timely sci-fi book, just with like the age of AI that we're living in, and just trying to see like where it could possibly go, because Annie is a robot that is consistently learning. She is starting to find human emotion, and to really kind of talk about what is the price of freedom to an AI bot. And sometimes we think about sci-fi and we think about these really abstract ideas, but it had me thinking about a conference I went to probably like 7 or 8 years now that was about AI and like the emergence of it and like where people can see it going. And I remember one thing sticking out to me was they talked about someone who had created a robot, but they were able to upload their significant other's conscience into that robot. So essentially, like when their spouse dies, they don't technically die because their conscience is in the robot. And it kind of freaked me out a little bit, right? Because we saw an example and it was essentially like the robot by visual cues could tell like, oh, that's my spouse, oh, that's my child, and be able to say things and kind of react to things the way that the actual human being would be, because they were creating this robot or AI based on a living human being. So they had all of this data to give the robot as this person was living. And I just don't know how I feel about that when it comes to relationships, when it comes to just like the morality of like when someone dies for them to still be there. But I could go down a whole rabbit hole of AI. I think it's just really like a buzzword, probably for everybody at this point, whether you're using it in your personal life, whether you're using it at work, whether you're just kind of a little nervous about where it's going to end up. But I feel like this book touches on the humanity of it all. And, it has a very interesting take, and I don't want to say too much because I feel like it like kind of takes away from the book because it's not something that's super long. But if you are someone who has just kind of had thoughts about AI, robots, people being in relationships with robots, how they would feel in just like the fictionalized version of that, I would definitely recommend Annie Bot. I did really enjoy it and kind of took a different turn than I thought it would. So I'm gonna give it I'm thinking like a 3.75. But you know, overall, 5 books in a week is not bad. I will absolutely take that. I'm still very behind on my goal because as I was reading, time continued on. That's how time works. And so now I'm still like 11 books behind on my goal, 12 books behind on my goal. So I don't know if we're gonna make it this year, guys, but I'm gonna try my best. But I'm so happy to be back with you guys. And if you made it to the end of this video, leave like a watch or like a time emoji because like the end of the year is running out. And if you made it to the end, as always, you are my absolute favorite. I think I say this almost in any video when I'm getting to the end and when I haven't posted in a while. But if you're watching this, I like truly appreciate you. I feel like I always have a passion for creating these videos and I just don't get around to it. And I think I would enjoy doing it if nobody watched, but I'm glad that you are here watching. If nobody told you, I'm glad that you're just here in general, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.